Most people think dominance is loud. They think you have to raise your voice, control the room, make noise, throw your weight around, let everyone know who you are and what you are capable of. But here is the truth, the cold, calculated truth, the real power, the kind that shakes a person right down to their bones, rarely makes a sound. Real dominance is quiet, unsettling, and undeniable. You do not need to say a single word to destroy someone's ego. In fact, sometimes silence does far more damage than any sentence ever could. When your presence alone is strong, grounded, still, and self-possessed, you create an invisible pressure, a psychological gravity that pulls their insecurity right to the surface. And the more they try to hide it, the more obvious it becomes, because you are not reacting, you are simply there, and that alone is enough to throw them off balance. I have seen it in boardrooms, in negotiations, in private conversations. A man walks in, loud, confident, trying to fill the space with his energy, hoping to assert himself through volume and performance. And across from him, another figure, someone sitting calm, eyes heavy, movements slow, not a single attempt to interrupt, and yet somehow the louder man starts to shrink, his voice falters. He begins to explain too much, justify too hard. He feels something in that silence. Something he cannot quite name, and most of the time he does not even realize what's happening. But you and I, we know. It is not about being passive, it is about being controlled. Silence is not about withholding, it is about applying pressure where it hurts most. Because when you do not respond the way they expect, or when you do not rush to defend yourself or compete with their performance, you force them to question themselves. And that is where the cracks begin to show. Their ego is built on reaction. Dominance requires oxygen, and when you give them none, they begin to suffocate inside their own performance. Evanstein. The moment you stop chasing validation, you pull all the control back into your hands. People with fragile egos expect a certain energy when they step into a room. They need eyes, they need reactions, they want applause, envy, challenge, anything that says, "I see you, I recognize your importance." And when that does not come, when you simply acknowledge their presence with a nod, if even that, and then return to your centered stillness, they freeze, because now they are not in control. Now they are wondering why you are not impressed, wondering what you know that they do not. Your stillness becomes the mirror they cannot avoid. Your silence becomes the question they do not have the answer to, and that discomfort, it grows in them. The longer you stay composed, they try to fill it with noise, more words, more gestures, more attempts to rise above. But the person who does not speak is the person everyone watches. The one who does not need the spotlight often becomes the one who owns it. You can walk into a room and say nothing and still dominate it with posture, with eye contact, or the choice to break it with how long you wait before you speak, with how little you need from the people around you. And that unsettles them, because we are conditioned to perform, to react, to prove things. But power, real enduring power, never proves, it simply exists. Once you master the art of presence and silence, you will start to see how quickly the room turns, how egos built on approval start to wobble, how eyes start to glance toward you even when you are not saying anything, because people feel it, even if they cannot name it. They feel the force of someone who is grounded, centered, someone who emanates internal authority, not borrowed from title or appearance, but built in silence over time. You do not need to compete with noise when you are the quietest person in the room, and still the one with the most gravity. People notice that, and the ones with something to prove will be unsettled by it. Their ego is waiting for validation, waiting for someone to acknowledge their strength, their intelligence, their energy. But when you remain still, when your expression does not shift, when your breath does not quicken, when you do not play their game, you force them to face the truth that their power is conditional and yours is not. Because the one who can sit in silence, without tension, without anxiety, is the one who does not need to win to feel whole. And if you do not need to win, you are already beyond them. So remember, this silence does not mean weakness. Stillness does not mean submission. It means control. And the more control you have over yourself, the less control anyone else has over you. Power is not always heard. Sometimes it is only felt. Most people walk into a room trying to be seen. They think dominance is about being the center of attention, about taking up space, about being loud and expressive and sharp. But real power, real psychological control, does not always look like that. It does not need the spotlight, and it does not compete for space. It creates space. It owns space without asking for it. You can destroy someone's ego without a word by mastering 3 things: your space, your time, and your attention. What you do with those 3 unspoken currencies determines whether you lower yourself to their level or make them reach for yours. Because when you control those without effort, you send a message their ego cannot ignore. Start with space, not just physical space, but energetic space. The way you take position, where you stand, how still you remain. People who are truly dominant do not fidget. They do not shift nervously. They are intentional with every move they take. Up space, not with noise, but with authority. You ever notice how the most powerful person in the room is the one sitting deepest in their chair? Not flinching, not blinking, just watching. There is something in that posture that rattles the ego of someone who needs to perform, someone who needs the room to reassure them they are important. Next is time, and there is nothing more unsettling to a fragile ego than someone who refuses to be rushed. The way you control time says everything about who holds the power. People who are desperate to prove themselves speak quickly. They interrupt, they rush to respond, to show they know, to make sure they are not forgotten. But dominance waits. Dominance observes and answers only when it feels right. Because when you make others operate on your tempo, you are telling them without a single word that you are the anchor. You are the one who sets the rhythm. I watched a man once in a high-pressure meeting. Everyone was pitching ideas, fast energy was high, everyone wanted to impress, and he just sat still, leaned back, watched, waited, and then maybe 10 minutes in, he leaned forward and spoke, slowly, clearly, and without raising his voice. And suddenly, the whole room froze. Silence fell like a curtain, because everyone could feel it in that moment. He owned the time. His stillness made them panic, his delay made them second-guess themselves, and his words hit harder because they did not come from a place of proving, but a place of knowing. And the final piece is your attention. Nothing breaks an ego faster than starving it of attention, especially when it expects it to be given easily. People who crave significance expect you to respond to their energy, to match it, to chase it, but when you choose where not to place your attention, when you look through someone instead of at them, when your eyes do not light up just because they walked in, they begin to feel the difference. It is a quiet cut, a surgical removal of validation, and they cannot stand it. The moment you stop acknowledging their need, you show them their power over you does not exist, and that burns because fragile egos need an audience. Strong egos move in silence, and when you give your attention sparingly, when you do not offer it simply because someone demands it, your value in the room rises and theirs starts to fall. You can sit across from someone and never say a single disrespectful thing and still communicate total control. You can communicate it with a glance or the lack of one, with how long you take to respond, with how unbothered you look by their intensity, and they will start adjusting themselves to your energy without realizing why they are doing it. They will question their tone, their confidence, their words, all because you did not move. Because people expect dominance to be loud, they expect it to come with stares and speeches and confrontation. What they do not expect is someone whose strength is so internal, so composed, that it makes others shrink without force, without volume, without even trying. And that is where real psychological dominance lives, not in volume, but in vibration. You do not have to interrupt someone to show them they are not leading the conversation. You just have to slow your breath, sit still, and let their energy run out like a match burning in silence. And the best part about this kind of control is that they cannot even call it an attack, because what did you do, really? You just existed better than them. You just held your space better, valued your time more, protected your attention like a throne. And when that happens, when someone realizes that all the noise they brought into the room had no effect, that you did not flinch, did not chase, did not even care to meet them at their level, their ego collapses quietly, because they have no foundation for their performance, no mirror, no echo, only your stillness. Ego cannot survive when it is not fed, and when you learn how to deliver that emptiness without a word, you will not need to prove who you are ever again. Silence wins when it knows exactly where to stand. Every insecure ego is built on a need, a hunger to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be significant. And if you want to destroy that ego without ever raising your voice, without ever engaging in conflict, then you must learn this one thing. Starve it of what it feeds on. Do not fight it, do not insult it, do not try to correct it, simply offer it nothing. You do not have to bring chaos to their world when silence will do more damage. You do not have to overpower someone who is already addicted to attention, because when you withhold your energy, your approval, your emotional response, you take away their ability to matter to you. And that is what breaks them, not your words, but your indifference, not rejection, not resistance, just pure, clean absence. The fragile ego craves being central. It wants everything to orbit around it. It depends on emotional reactions, even negative ones, to validate that it still has power. So when you remove reaction, you take away their oxygen. You see, when someone insults you or provokes you, and you respond with anger or defense even if you think you are standing your ground, what you are really doing is feeding their significance. You are telling them your state of mind still depends on them. Their voice still has a hold on you. But what happens when you give them nothing? What happens when they try to get under your skin and you do not even blink? They throw passive jabs and you do not even notice. They walk into the room expecting impact and you do not even look up. That is when the damage begins, because now their question is not, how do I influence you? It becomes, why can I not affect you at all? And here is where it gets real, because breaking an ego is not about humiliating them in front of others. That is just theater. If you humiliate them publicly, they will rebuild that ego out of resentment, and now they are just wounded and loud. But when you break them quietly, by making them irrelevant, now they have to sit with the truth that you did not even think of them enough to push back, and that eats at them in the dark. There is someone I remember very well, a man who used to dominate every room with his voice, always trying to position himself as superior, no matter who was in front of him, cutting people off, bragging about things no one asked, humble jokes that were really just dig at others. And one day during a conversation I tried something. I responded to everyone but him. He made a comment and I simply looked past like I was addressing a different point. Continued speaking calmly right through it, not with anger, not with shade, just as if his words carried no weight. The silence that followed was deafening, and I watched him break right there, not visually, not loudly, but internally. You could feel the shift, and the conversation went on, and over time he started to shrink, not because anyone called him out, but because the one thing his ego needed the most, significance, was silently drained from the room. He was still there, but he was now invisible. This is the art of emotional starvation, and it is not cold-hearted when used with purpose. It is precise, like a surgeon, not out for domination but for clarity. It reminds both you and them whose energy is truly in control, because if someone can pull you out of your peace with one look or one sentence, then they own you. But if you can stay unmoved while they try everything to spark a reaction, then you have taken back all the power. And here is what makes it so effective. You never have to declare your dominance. You never have to announce that you are not impressed or offended. They will know it from the way you do not flinch. They will feel it in the way your eyes do not shift to chase their validation. They will crumble slowly, trying to figure out what went wrong, what they missed, and all you did was maintain your silence and follow your focus. Functionally, it looks like this. When they interrupt, let them. When they try to provoke, say little or nothing. If you respond, stay calm, brief and emotionally flat. And when they try to make themselves important, do not give them your eyes. Do not give them your energy. Reserve yourself. The people who matter will feel the power in your restraint, and the ones who perform will spiral, trying to reclaim relevance they no longer have. Because nothing is louder than being ignored by someone who commands reach. Nothing is harsher than realizing you are invisible to someone whose attention means power. and nothing fractures a desperate ego faster than a mirror that shows no reflection. They cannot control a presence that does not respond, and that is how you dominate without a single word. Emotional discipline is the final level, the place where true dominance lives, not in controlling others, but in remaining absolutely untouchable yourself. And if you really want to destroy someone's ego without ever opening your mouth, this is how you do it. You let them throw everything they can at you, and you stay cold, still, and focused, because the moment they realize they cannot reach into your emotions, the game is already over. Most people are easy to provoke. That is the reality. It does not take much. One comment, one look, one petty move, and they break character. They start reacting, defending, proving, explaining, and when they do that, they lose the position of power. The person who can be pulled out of their calm is the person who can be controlled, and the one who stays rooted while everything else moves is the one who sets the pace, sets the tone, and owns the room. You see, people who operate from ego depend on emotional chaos. They rely on being able to trigger a response. They gain ground by making you uncomfortable, make you doubt yourself, make you shift. They throw jabs, expecting heat. They test your patience, expecting you to snap, because when you lose composure, your value drops, and theirs momentarily rises. But when you choose stillness, even when you have every excuse to react, the dynamic flips completely. Make yourself smaller. You change too easily. When you have to throw rocks at them for their so-called failures. I remember watching this happen up close, a guy trying everything he could to provoke. He insulted quietly, suggested disrespectfully, tried little power plays, all the usual tactics, but across the table the other man did not move. He blinked slowly, he breathed evenly, he made no attempt to fire back. And what happened next was not loud. The other guy started shrinking. He started rushing his words, pulling back his energy, and you could feel the ego collapse happening slowly because nothing worked. That feeling of uselessness hits hard, especially for someone who thrives on controlling the emotional temperature of the room, and you take that power from them simply by governing yourself better than they can understand. You stay cold, and what that really means is you choose neutrality, you choose restraint, not out of weakness, but out of precision. Because when someone expects fire and gets stone, when they expect a reaction and get silence, when they expect you to try and prove something and you give them no movement, they start to question everything, not just about you but about themselves. Why? Why will he respond? What is he thinking? Does he even care? What does he know that I? Don't those questions start playing on a loop in their subconscious, while on the outside you are just sitting there, still, unbothered, unshaken? That is a psychological freeze that cuts far deeper than anger ever could. Staying cold is not about numbness, it is about discipline. Your discipline in not allowing anyone to hijack your energy, no matter what mask they wear. And there is no louder silence than the one that comes after someone has failed to make you flinch. That is how you communicate that you are in control and that they are trying to play a game you stopped entertaining long ago. Emotion is a tool, and people will try to weaponize yours against you. But if you remove the weapon, there is nothing left to use. And you remove it by choosing your response every time. Choosing not to escalate, not to match petty energy, not to justify, not to retreat. Just to be still, focused and surgical with the little you do say, if anything at all. A powerful presence does not need to rise in volume or gesture in defense or turn sharp in anger. A powerful presence drains egos because it is precise and silent and has no emotional leaks. If you want to see someone unravel, let them witness your neutrality when they are trying to provoke passion, because it makes them disappear in their own storm. The wind is blowing, but you are unmoved. And they hate that, because it shows them they are nothing to push against. No soft spot, no doorway, no window, just a wall. And if you can master that wall, while still being human, while still being grounded and aware, then you become the one thing the insecure ego cannot tolerate. A reflection that shows nothing, a presence that gives nothing, and a center they cannot touch. Every time you choose not to react, you teach them their position does not affect yours. Every time you stay calm when they crave chaos, you cut deeper than 1,000 insults ever could. To remain emotionally disciplined while others fall apart is the purest form of dominance. And once you master that, they stop trying to reach you because deep down they know they never could.